of Cabinet, Police and Fire on Thursday 23rd of January 2025. First item on the agenda, report apologies for absence, Councillor Wallace and Councillor Devlin. In terms of introductions for today, we have Chief Superintendent Lynn Ratcliffe, Divisional Commander for Greater Glasgow, and we're delighted to welcome Chief Inspector Gillian Folds, the new Area Commander for East Renfrewshire, for her first meeting. So delighted to have you here, and best wishes and good luck for your time with East Renfrewshire. We also have from Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Kevin Murphy has given his apologies, Area Commander. And we do have Alan Coftree here, the Group Commander for East Renfrewshire. I don't think we can just welcome Gillian without saying thank you to Chief Inspector Graham Galley. He's left and moved on to greater and better things, we hope, in a superintendent post in Ayrshire. I think Graham had huge impacts, I think, in East Renfrewshire. He will be missed. He worked incredibly well. He really epitomised partnership working, and I'm setting you up here in terms of expectations, but he will be missed, and we wish him all the best for the future. So if we can then go on to the third, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. So on to item number 3, which is the Police Scotland Performance Report for the third quarter of 24-25. And I'll hand over to Lynn. Thank you, Lynn.
Good morning, everyone. Chair, members, as ever, pleased to be here in person to deliver the Quarter 3 update, covering the period October to December 2024, which is the report outlines is a busy period for all of us for a number of different reasons. Just as you have, Chair, I just want to start by thanking members and colleagues and partners beyond Cabinet who got in touch with now Temporary Superintendent Graham Galley to bid him a fond farewell and wish him all the best in his new role in Ayrshire. The fact that so many did make contact with Graham, I think, is testimony to the high regard in which he was held by so many across East Renfrewshire and indicative of how much he'll be missed. I'd like to put on record, if I may, my own personal thanks for everything that Graham contributed to the safety, security and well-being of the communities of East Renfrewshire, and his support for the broader efforts of Greater Glasgow Division, and the advice and often wise counsel that he gave me over the course of the last year. And as much as Graham's departure is a loss again, Chair, as you've alluded to, we're equally blessed, I think, to be welcoming Chief Inspector Jill Folds to the Area Commander role at Golf Charlie, as we in policing call it. Jill knows the division and this area very well. I know that she's already met some of you, and she has a good understanding of the wealth of diversity across her communities, and brings with her a breadth and wealth of police experience which will serve her well in the new role. I'm really delighted to welcome Jill into the command team at Greater Glasgow, especially in the knowledge that, if you pardon the pun, she punches way above her rank in relation to her abilities, and I know that you will enjoy working with her over the coming period. She will do, I know, an outstanding job for the communities of East Renfrewshire. Moving now to the report, which I will, if I may, take as read by members. I think there are many positives to draw out, with housebreakings down by almost 50%, fraud reduced by 15%, robbery down by 33%, serious assaults down by 12%, and increased proactivity across the teams in relation to drug-related crime. Sexual crimes, however, and we spoke about this at last Cabinet, continue to rise locally and nationally, and we're working hard to understand the reasons for this and ensure that we continue to work hand in hand with partners to tackle the broader issue of violence against women and girls. And indeed, as the report references, we've just recently concluded in November the 16 days of action in that regard. Similarly, common assaults have increased from last year, and we know that there's a worryingly, if you like, younger element involved in that type of behaviour. So our campus officers continue to work closely with colleagues in education and beyond to ensure that we educate and deter our young people from engaging in violent crime and disorder, the latter often being a precursor to crimes of violence. And finally, I'll finish with a thanks to East Renfrewshire Council for their support and leadership in delivering a hugely successful event at Fireworks. It went safely, it was enjoyed very much by the local communities, and I think many across the city that could see it from far and wide, but we do very much welcome these organised events which are a real opportunity for the community to enjoy fireworks night safely, safety being the key, but it really was quite spectacular. I am more than happy, as is Jill, to delve into any aspects of the report in further detail if members would like, and similarly happy, Chair, to take any questions that may come our way. But as ever, thank you very much, and lovely to be here.
Thank you very much, Lynn. And yet again, we've got a very good report and very reassuring to members, I'm sure, but I'm sure there'll be a number of questions. So Caroline Bamforth, please.
Thank you very much, and I'm delighted that Jill has come, although we miss Graham. He was very approachable and very good at supporting local people.
Caroline, would you mind moving your
oh, sorry,
microphone a bit closer to me?
It's probably because I'm so small. Oh, that sounds a bit louder. I'm glad to read your background is in domestic violence, because this is one of the things I always ask about. There's two things I always ask about, and I'm going to ask about it again today, so I'm glad you've got that experience and background. One of the things that was mentioned in the public protection part about the sexual offences, I'm glad that these numbers have increased, which sounds bad, but I know that means that it's not only historic ones that are being brought forward, it means that current incidents, women and young people, and well, not just young people, women and men, I'm sure, are willing to come forward now because they know that they'll be taken seriously and believed, and you'll follow through. But I just wondered about one of the stats, is about 456 incidents, which is a slight increase, which, as I say, I'm not concerned about the increase, but it mentions 60% of these incidents were non-criminal in nature. So can you clarify what non-criminal means? Does that mean that it didn't meet a threshold, or the person who the violence had been allegedly against hasn't followed through? In both of those cases, what supports do we follow up? Because I'm a bit concerned that 60% of these cases, people are women and men, will have reported, and you know, what supports have they got going forward if they're not reporting, just to make sure that they continue to be safe. My second question, if you'll indulge me all, I have a resident, just like Councillor Pragnell and I were speaking about earlier. You know, we're here to ask questions, but we're here to represent our residents, and we all know about the tragic incident in Neaglesome this week, where the very experienced and well regarded cyclist lost his life. I'm not asking you about that because that's under investigation. However, it has stirred up some concerns, which, to be honest, when I say stirred up concerns, there are concerns continually. In my ward, I get, and Andrew will be the same, I get more people writing to me or emailing me or contacting me about cycle lanes and wanting more, as opposed to which some other areas I think people want less. So we have a lot of cyclists, and Ayr Road is probably the busiest cycle route in our area anyway. So if I can just read you this. The quarterly update from East Renfrewshire Police contains no information about what measures are being taken to protect vulnerable road users, particularly cyclists. This omission is especially concerning given the recent decision taken without reason by East Ren Police to no longer prosecute drivers who cross into mandatory cycle lanes, despite previously highlighting the success of this in a previous Cabinet meeting. A move that undermines the safety of cyclists. Ayr Road, the most cycled route in South Glasgow, remains one of the most dangerous for cyclists. Tragically, we are mourning the loss of a fellow cyclist this week, a member of my cycling club, following a collision with a driver. This tragedy has left our club shocked and increasingly fearful, particularly as several members have been hit by drivers in the past 6 months. What specific actions do East Renfrewshire Police have planned for this quarter to deter dangerous driving and protect cyclists on Ayr Road? Additionally, how concerned are East Renfrewshire Police? I know they say East Renfrewshire and it's not East Renfrewshire Police, it's what is it you called it? I know, but no, you had an acronym for it. GC. Are East Renfrewshire Police with the rising number of incidents involving cyclists on this road, and what do they see as the most pressing issue contributing to these risks? And I completely understand it is an issue. I'll explain a little bit without getting into too much detail about the issues particular to Ayr Road, is that we have the cycle lanes, as you'll be aware. However, there are a lot of residents parking in those cycle lanes, and there has been a bit of a, I can't say misinformation, but we were told initially that no one could be charged for parking in the cycle lanes because it had to be a moving offence. And then we've been told recently, actually that's not true. You don't have to catch somebody cycling in them. So there's a bit of ambiguity out there. The way to overcome that, I believe, would be to put double yellow lines, which is the council's responsibility. It's not the police, but that will take money. It will take a TRO. It will be, a longer term plan. Hopefully not too long. But in the meantime, is there anything police can do to ensure our cyclists, particularly in this road, because it is quite a bad hotspot, as I hope he doesn't mind me being personal, but I believe Councillor Anderson had a fall on his bike. It is a busy road. We've reduced, or the speed limit has been reduced, but it still is a bit of a hotspot. So can you confirm what will be done, what you're looking at? I understand you're new in the job, you're maybe not aware of this yet, and about the ambiguity around who can do what. Thank you. Sorry if that was so long.
Yeah, that was very long. It was actually a bit confusing as to what the question is, but you made that point of that. Just on I'm not sure we want to encourage individual cases to be aired here. So, but the substance of what was raised is you can address, but if that makes sense. And if it is a specific case, that can be dealt with separately with the councillor, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor, and can I just say thanks to Divisional Commanders, warm welcome and thanks for being here today, and I hope to get to know you all in person and continue on with the good work that Graham Galley has done in Golf Charlie subdivision. And just in relation to the question, I'll take the first question on domestic abuse. Certainly I was the DCI in Greater Glasgow Division for over 2 years during the challenging times of COVID. And just to explain how we work when it comes to domestic abuse, when it says no crime, that means that's usually something that's a domestic argument. We may have a concern from a neighbour, from another third party in relation to noise, raised voices, and it's our job to go out and actually make sure that there are no concerns at that time. So that's why you'll see there's a lot of those incidents that are no crime. It can be as simple as an argument. Or something that's been misinterpreted. There can be occasions when we go out to a no crime, but which we think is a no crime argument, and when we speak to both parties separately, it then can come to light that something actually has occurred. If there was a crime occurred, whether the victim wants to engage or not, that would be recorded by police on our crime recording system, and an incident would be raised on our interim vulnerable persons database so that we can keep a record of the incident, so that no matter where a perpetrator moves in Scotland, we would have a record of that. So even if that no crime, the victim or potential victim says nothing's happened at this stage, they could come back to us a year later and say, that time the police attended, I said it was only an argument, actually I was assaulted. I just wasn't ready to report. So we have a bespoke date, time, location, and then we can then progress that investigation. What we do see is a large percentage of our incidents nationally are no crime, and because we have a joint protocol with COPFS, we do robustly police domestic abuse because we understand that victims might not be ready to engage, and it's came from a neighbour but there's clearly signs of a disturbance. The child has made a disclosure, and then the police will then fully investigate that, do door to door, listen to 999 calls. And even if there is no crime immediately identified, we'd still do our domestic abuse questions to identify any risk. And just for the information of members, we've just recently converted our domestic abuse risk assessment into BSL. So we can try and reach wider members of the communities to be more inclusive. And we will then do the questions, and we will remind them there is support out there if they want to go to Women's Aid, other local support groups, and then come through the third party reporting or support to report at a later date. So just because there's no crime doesn't mean to say we don't signpost or give information. They just might, sorry, I've got a really sore throat, they might not be ready to report at that stage. But it is in line with the kind of national picture when it comes to domestic abuse, and having that national database is really, really important because it counts a repeat of victims and it counts a repeat of perpetrators, and that history and chronology, so that we can go back and revisit incidents if we need to. So hopefully that will answer your question, Councillor.
I'll come in, if I may, Councillor, on the second question, and thank you for raising it. Jill does have a knowledge, because Jill was on over the weekend, and we were all very interested to see over the course of the weekend, without personalising it too much for the reasons that you've rightly highlighted. We were very interested to see what the medical updates would be over the course of the weekend, and really saddened by the death, and our thoughts go out to the family and friends. Obviously one of them's got in touch with you, so as you say, that matter is very much under investigation, so I won't comment on the specifics of that, but answer the broader question that you asked, if I may. So I think first and foremost, what's really important for us is that incidents involving cyclists, and in particular cyclists v motorists, are reported to us. We know from working with various cycling groups across the city that it's traditionally underreported, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that, and one of them may well be that the police, there may be a perception that the police won't take those reports seriously, but we absolutely do, we absolutely will, and very often there's some very helpful footage, that, because very often cyclists have got the helmet cams that we can use. So my first thing would be urging people to report near misses or incidents where vehicles and cyclists come together, or sometimes pedestrians are known to put a hand out or put a leg out, and it can result in injuries to cyclists. So we need to get things reported to us, because that allows us to respond at a local level. It also allows us to respond at a national level as well, because as we've discussed in Cabinet before, we have a whole number of specialist resources, including road policing, who can come and support us in tackling these types of incidents. But what we're really keen to do is educate motorists and educate pedestrians about what it's actually like to be on a bicycle. So we, over the course of last year, and we intend to do it again this year, run all across the city Operation Close Pass, which is, you're nodding, so you know it's about the proximity and making sure that people give cyclists plenty of room. In relation to the specific issue in terms of Ayr Road, you're absolutely right that parking is quite a complex issue, in the sense that many aspects and in many instances of it have been decriminalised. So the police don't always have a locus, it depends. You mentioned thresholds in relation to the domestic abuse instance. The same very often applies in terms of parking, whether it's causing an obstruction, whether there's room for pedestrians and cyclists to pass. But what we can do, and I know, as I say, that Jill has cited, we will try over the course of the coming weeks to get additional officers up into the area. First of all, it gives a visible presence, can act as a deterrent, but allows us to sort of information gather a little bit and understand what those issues are. Once we've got a better idea of what the challenges are in the area, we can then look to develop a bit of a bespoke plan, and if needs be, we can bring in those specialist units that I spoke about. But the key is really education, prevention, before we go into the areas of enforcement. We'll make the assessment in terms of where that particular issue is at, respond accordingly, and I'm more than happy to give you a direct update if you would like in a few weeks' time, once with the chance to do that, and you can feed back to your constituents, and I'll share it, Chair, through yourself if you would like that disseminated to the broader Cabinet,
Okay.
because I know that a number of members will have an interest in that. Thanks.
Caroline, do you want to come back?
Yeah, please. I just wanted to clarify that the person who wrote to me is not connected to the incident in Eaglesham. It's two different areas, but what they were basically highlighting is what cyclists are worried about, because I've not had issues highlighted to me about Eaglesham and cyclists. It's always been the Ayr Road corridor, and that's been the issue around the parking and the specifics, like you're saying about educating. I think we've educated a lot of drivers when they're driving. The issue seems to be educating people about parking in the cycle lanes, because what then happens inevitably is the cyclists need to go onto the carriageway, and that's when they are in danger. So it was just to clarify that I wasn't asking for any further information about Eaglesham. I know that's a separate, and this is
completely
two different.
appreciated that, but no, that leave it with us, and we'll give you some bespoke information a couple of weeks' time once we've had a chance to get.
I'd just like to add to your comment about underreporting of
Yeah.
cycle accidents. I do think that's a national issue.
It is.
I was quite frustrated at a COSLA Environment and Economy Board meeting. We have plenty of data on road accidents by all degrees of severity. When asked for the cyclist data, just wasn't there. So I do think that is an issue that we do need to be more cognizant of, particularly as more cycling lanes are being installed. I think we need to understand the safety implications of that as we go through.
Indeed, Chair, and I think it's as the better weather improves and more people take to the road, we always have a national calendar of road safety, and it will feature very heavily across February and March, and on our social media channels in Greater Glasgow as well, to try and urge that as we go into the lighter nights.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Pragnell.
Thank you, and thanks for the report, and welcome to Police and Fire Cabinet. I look forward to working with you. I have a question on the hate crimes. So it says 71% were detected and 28% of those were juvenile offenders. So I wanted just a bit of detail about how were these dealt with, especially if they are juvenile offenders. Were they known to authorities? Also, what is the process and the threshold for hate crimes? Because there was a bit of misinterpretation when the new guidance came in on hate crimes. So and people still have questions about when does it officially become a crime.
Just to give you a bit of context, I know you may think that figure might look a bit alarming for hate crime, but a third of those incidents relate to police officers being the victim, and there's not one specific category. They're over various motivated hate incidents, so it's just to give you some reassurance on that. And then obviously if it comes to specific offenders, we will be putting in an incident on our vulnerable persons database as well for any youth offending, and make sure that they're shared with the children's services as well for children's and families, and also put in reports to the children's reporter where it's appropriate. So it may look alarming from those stats, but it's just to give you a bit of context that a third of those relate to police officers. Hate crime, we do have training that's available for our officers as they're adapting to the new legislation. There were the previous social media campaigns out there encouraging reporting, and I suspect as officers become more familiar with the use of the legislation, it's a bit like the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act. We would expect those figures to rise as people have confidence to report, and if you perceive you are a victim, then come forward and let the police then assess it, and a crime report would be recorded. If there is no victim and it is still a hate style incident, then we would still record that on a separate database, but not as a crime. So does that make sense, hopefully? Thanks, Councillor.
I have no idea idea that actually a lot of it was towards police officers, and in our figures it would have been useful sometimes if we could have had a breakdown of general members of the public versus police officers, because I just didn't realise that these figures were included in that.
Sorry, Councillor Pradman, I was just going to come in very briefly to say you are very astute in your observation around the complexity, if you like, of hate incidents versus hate crime, because in the similar to the point that you raised, Councillor Bamforth, about the distinction between the two, there is a very clear one. And when there's a new piece of legislation, it did receive widespread media coverage at the time about the complexities of it and interpretation of it. As Jill has said, we undertook a very significant training programme in advance of the legislation. All of our officers across Police Scotland have participated in that, and we work almost on a daily basis with highly trained hate crime advisors. So it might be beneficial, and I'll perhaps take it in advice off table from the chair. I am quite happy to share for the committee's awareness the information that we have and how we go about defining a hate crime and recording it, because its length, it would take up the rest of the meeting and beyond. But please be assured that hate crimes are reviewed every single morning at Area Commander and by myself. So I know on any given day how many hate crimes there have been across Greater Glasgow Division, what the breakdown of those are, how many are detected, how many are under investigation, if there are any repeat victims, and also what we've got in place by way of follow-up and safeguarding. So it's very, very closely scrutinised, taken very seriously by police, and happy to bring along, perhaps with the next report, an appendix on that particular issue, because I say it is lengthy, and as you say, it's complex.
The rest of the committee comfortable receiving that? Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, because it is very nuanced. It's new, and I think in this committee in particular, we're acutely aware of the ethnic diversity within East Renfrewshire, and we want to make sure that harmony persists. Absolutely. And understanding how we're tracking that would be great too. Katie, you want to come back in?
It's on another question. I know this crosses into Glasgow's policing, but there have been incidents at Muir and Sainsbury's, and obviously in my ward, a lot of people shop there, so I've had a lot of emails. I know it's kind of casework, but what is the interaction between the police in East Renfrewshire and Glasgow, because it is literally on the boundary, this supermarket, and it is used by residents, particularly in Netherley, Stamperland, and actually in Giffnock, so quite close proximity to our police station. So what joint working is going on?
So you're absolutely right that there's a cross-boundary issue there, and the boundary is a line on a map. So from a policing perspective, whilst we use these lines on the maps for data gathering purposes, at the risk of sounding dismissive about it, it doesn't affect how we police. I have responsibility, as you know, for all of Greater Glasgow, Eastern Bartonshire, East Renfrewshire and Glasgow itself. We have area commanders who have subdivisional boundaries. They are overseen by 3 superintendents, again, who have responsibility for defined areas. In terms of the actual day-to-day policing, though, I'm not saying it makes no difference in terms of we're aware of the boundaries, but in terms of collaborative working, whether that's with partners, whether that's with teams from different police offices, it is very, very joined up. If we need to, we very often develop action plans to tackle a specific issue, such as the one that you've described, and again, whilst that will have someone who's defined responsibility for that action plan, it will very often involve officers from a number of different areas, simply because they know the individuals involved, they know the area, but they work very, very well together, and they're very well versed in doing that. And indeed, on a day-to-day basis across the 3 areas that comprise Greater Glasgow, our response policing model is a divisional one. So again, very often there'll be officers from other areas that work out of Giffnock, Barrhead police offices, and vice versa. So you're absolutely right to call out the boundaries, and they do exist for primarily for data collection and ownership purposes, but it's a very fluid and very flexible model that I can assure you is entirely joined up.
Okay. Can I just come back? What advice would you give to the public in East Rayne about this particular supermarket, because they're just a bit wary, a bit frightened if they witness these incidents? What should they do just on their personal safety if they're witnessing these shoplifting incidents?
Yeah, the team are fully cited on the shoplifting incidents, and they do regularly attend various supermarkets. We do have a few supermarkets that have been particularly targeted in the area, and we do have some issues with some youth disorder in the area as well. So I would encourage them to report it, because if it's reported, then I know about it, and then I can put additional patrols in place in the area just to try and understand how big an issue it is. We certainly link in with the security as well at the supermarkets, because clearly they have their own part to play internally in relation to what's going on within their store, and we've got good close working relationships with the supermarkets across the subdivisions from what I can initially see, even though I've only been here a very short time. So please, Councillor, just encourage the reporting, and then I'll monitor that going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Jill. Great to have you here. I think I should first clear up about my cycling incident. Was my own stupidity because of tyre pressure. So it's, thankfully there was no, cars involved, which I'm glad to say. But I'm a cyclist, and Councillor Banforth and I represent the same area, and Ayr Road. Yep, it's something we've had a lot of emails about. The cyclists are quite active. With regards to that, and Councillor Banforth mentioned, I've spoken to the roads about what we can do, and the double yellows, to deter drivers from actually parking. Segregation is the main thing. It's keeping the cyclists and the drivers away from each other. So, with also regards to that, I did actually suggest to them, because I'm aware of it actually in Glasgow District Council, Area Council, and in Renfrewshire, and I think even East Dunbartonshire as well, where we have very wide roads like Ayr Road. I have suggested to them, why can't cars park in the middle? Because it's so wide, and it's now only a single carriageway, and there's chevrons plus islands, and I know there's safety issues about parking there, turning and vision and all the rest of it, but it happens elsewhere. Why can't we do that? Because it segregates the parking from the cyclists, and then it's just not, hopefully then not as much of an issue. So, but again, it takes time. That's the problem, is getting through that and doing whatever we need to do. It takes resources potentially, but long term, hopefully that's something we can do to completely, solve the issue. So hopefully we'll just have to wait and see how that progresses with roads and what solutions we can come up with. Moving on, you talked about, and Councillor Pragnell brought it up about domestic violence. Seen an incident where, where the person who's been on the receiving end of something, if in your police officer's judgment, if they may not want to proceed with it at the time, but if it's absolutely clear that they've been subject to some kind of crime, would your officers actually act and address that person? I'll let you answer that first.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take that question. No, absolutely we would. I mentioned the joint protocol that we have with the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, so we will investigate that. So if that call comes in and that victim does not want to engage, but there's clear evidence of criminality, we will still fully investigate it. And we'll do the door-to-door inquiries, say the 999 call, speak to anyone else that's present and try and gather enough evidence. And that might result in an arrest at that point. Well, we do the inquiry and remove the perpetrator from the location, because that can sometimes be enough to then get the victim on board. And when the perpetrator is removed, so we absolutely still investigate that.
Great, thanks for that clarity. I think it's quite important. Moving on, actually, there was also hate crime was mentioned. Where are you with the body cams? Because I think that's a key thing. If it's police officers and primarily on the receiving end, I think that would help significantly in that instance. Is that the truth? Are they coming soon?
Councillor Anderson, was that your last question? Is there anything else that you want to raise?
Well, I had a
Could you bring that in now so we're clear?
My final statement is, the key thing for us, Jill, is you've heard now lots of examples of the partnership in this area. This is the things that have struck me, where it's education, campus officers, health and social care. It's that ability, and it was mentioned about Graham in particular. It's incredibly valuable to us. You have our 100% support. I'm sure you know that, and it's maintaining that and actually. Because I think it's absolutely key, because there's so many events in here that are mentioned where the police have attended, and it's about education, it's about presence and that partnership. It's fantastic here, and we're really hoping that if you can maintain that as much as you can, please.
Councillor Anderson, thank you for the question in relation to the body cams. So yes, we have a supplier and a contractor identified. There is a national rollout programme for body cam, which starts in the spring in the north of the country, and it will roll out across the various divisions. We're later in the programme towards the autumn of the year, which in one way is disappointing because I'm very keen to get it. However, as is often the case, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, given the size and the number of officers in Greater Glasgow Division, some 2,500, they tend to trial it and problem solve in other smaller areas. As you may imagine, it's not just about giving the officers the camera, which will be a huge step forward for us in terms of deterrent, in terms of evidence gathering, in terms of officer safety, which is really important to us as well, and most importantly community safety. But there's a whole sort of backup system that needs to be in place for us to download footage. It will allow us to share things much more quickly and easily with partners, and particularly the Procurator Fiscal. So the programme is there is a schedule for it. It will be coming to a police office near you in 2025, and we're extremely keen to get it. And I have asked the programme to consider some requests for specific skill set officers to get it in advance of perhaps some of the others that work in this area, so that we've got some capability in certain areas where it might prove to be particularly useful. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Caroline.
Sorry, it's just a comment, I promise it's not a big long question. You mentioned, a few people mentioned hate crimes. I just want to see how good the police training is in terms of that, because, and I did write to Graham in the past, there was a couple of officers came to one of our community council meetings where there was a lot of really pejorative questions asked, and it was a very difficult situation. It was during the first couple of weeks of it, and they were wonderful. They were very informative, and they were very, very good how they handled it. So I just wanted to mention that I think your training in terms of the hate crime is excellent, certainly with those officers anyway, but I'm sure that's across the board.
Just a final comment from me, if I can. This is a very good report, and I think the perception of crime can be very different from the actual, and you know that very, very well. And East Renfrewshire has consistently been probably one of the safest places in Scotland. But I'm not sure the people of East Renfrewshire necessarily know that, or believe it, or feel it. So I'm wondering if there's something on how we communicate, and this is a member's responsibility as well, in terms of, because we always pick up on when things go wrong or there's incidents, and that's fine, and we do need to investigate that. How do you think we can do that, either in partnership with the council or whatever? Maybe you already do something to communicate.
Again, I think it's a very well observed point, and indeed it's one that the Chief Constable she set out without getting into the strategy of a 3-year vision and business plan. And one of the things that she talks about is us being more vocal and advertising, for want of a better word, the success stories. So we are very much looking at that at a local level. One of the areas that we do sort of mention good work, etc., is in our social media channels. So there's perhaps a bit more that we could do in conjunction with East Renfrewshire Council around social media. I also think that the older traditional styles of media, the hard copy, local newspapers and things, we need to be far more proactive in that. But it's certainly one that I'm happy to take away and ask our partnerships department very much look at our communications. Happy to take that away, get a better look at it, and indeed it's well observed, and if there's more that we can do together, I would certainly welcome that opportunity. Thanks, Chair.
That's great. So I think we could probably pick that up under the community planning partnership
Indeed.
sort of model and how we talk about our outcomes and delivery. I really picked on that because of the housebreakings. You know, that's a really significant reduction, and we all know if there's one housebreaking incident, then it's magnified, and that raises fear and impressions that the place isn't as safe as it actually is. So I think if we can be stronger on our messaging on this, that would be great. So Stephen, you'll note that and pick that up with Louise and the likes afterwards. How we deal with that? What does that look like? Great. Thank you very much for that. So if there are no more questions on the police report, we'll move on to item number 4, which is Scottish Fire and Rescue Service performance report for the third quarter of 24-25. And Alan Coftree will be giving us this report. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to present a report for quarter 3, covering the period from the 1st of October to 31st of December 24. This will be the last in this format, and I'll share a copy of the template with Cabinet prior to the next meeting, allowing everybody to review the new format and feedback where appropriate. Firstly, Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to record my thanks to Graham for all the support, advice, guidance, both to myself and to SFRS in general over the period of time in his tenure. Very much promoted partnership approach that we've got within East Renfrewshire, and very, very easy person to work with. I'd also like to welcome Jill, who I very much look forward to working with, and I'm sure that we'll continue in the same vein. Chair, if you don't mind, prior to going through my report, I'd just like to highlight that as a service we're making changes to our home fire safety visit programme, and I've been involved with quite a few members of the local authority over the past few weeks in introducing this. So as one of our key partners, we wanted to let you know what the changes are, provide details of how we can assist to make the community safer through the new programme. So as an overview, each year we deliver over 40,000 home fire safety visits to homes across Scotland. The visits from ourselves means our staff engage with individuals within the home environment to identify potential fire risks and provide advice and education. The new programme will be delivering a more targeted visit to high-risk individuals who meet a new eligibility criterion, incorporating wider health and social care issues. This is based around factors which we know increases someone's risk of fire. We have also reviewed and updated our visit content and are exploring ways to strengthen onward referrals and signposting to and from partner organisations. So the key thing that we look for here is for us to sign up to allow the information sharing protocols to be built into one programme, and we're allowed then to share the information so we can then onward signpost people to all our partners that sit within the partnership, and also for us to have the information there to pass on to the most vulnerable within our communities to gain that information and act upon it appropriately. So we've had some engagement sessions which I know that some of the people within the council have attended. However, I would just like to offer as well that as we go through the process, I'm more than happy to set up individual one-to-one sessions, group sessions or whatever to support us through the process. We're hopeful that the new process will start towards the end of February, and there will be a changeover period. There will be an interim measure where we'll still continue as we are just now. And I look forward to providing you with further information and how successful that is as we move forward. I would also like to thank East Renfrewshire Council and Police Scotland for the support provided in the build-up to and during bonfire period. Once again, this resulted in another successful and safe bonfire campaign, which resulted in no injuries to firefighters and no attacks on our appliances, and very limited activity during that period. And that only comes again with successful partnership work that we have. There was a lot of communication went on prior to it in terms of forming plans, support provided by police sitting in at our stations, and the coordination part at the beginning of this is what makes it so successful. So I'd just like to record my thanks for that. Chair, I'll now go through the main body of the report. I just quickly would like to highlight the activity during quarter 3. So we had community safety activities which are carried out by our community action team and our operational crews, total 89. we carried out 223 home fire safety visits. Of those, 82 were high risk, and we also managed to achieve 38 post-domestic incident responses, which was attendance at other premises either side of the incident while we were attending incidents. And from these we generated a further 41 home fire safety visits. So this is key to getting in people's doors, being able to engage with people, and this is how we, not only for ourselves for the fire safety point of view, but then being able to signpost them on to our other partners to assist wherever we can and highlight the services that's available. Moving on to the first indicator, so accidental dwelling fires, really positive in this quarter. Once again, cooking is a key contributor to the activity within this reporting period, with 9 out of the 11 incidents being attributed to cooking or failure of cooking equipment. Our community action team continue to deliver the fire safety experiential training, which is available to all partners, and there's been a huge uptake on that. And this allows us to identify, again, the potential for fire risk within the house, and obviously be able to signpost people on to our partners. Key to reducing this activity is the interpretation of the data to identify key areas of activity, and early intervention and the continuation and progression of our partnership approach within East Renfrewshire is what will drive this activity down. Accidental dwelling fire casualties. It's really positive to note that we had none within this reporting period, and this confirms the benefit of continuing to work with our key partners to identify the most vulnerable within our communities, share information, and again signpost to all services that's available to everybody. Moving on to unintentional harm. It's encouraging to note that we had no increase within this category, but it's also important to note that all the injuries were minor, with first aid being provided at the scene for one casualty and the remainder attending hospital for precautionary checkups. Road traffic collisions again featured highly in this activity, but again resulted in minor injuries to the individuals involved. As well as continuing with our existing education programme to drivers of all ages, we also hosted, in partnership with Police Scotland, a pop-up event at the Avenue Shopping Centre during December to raise awareness and provide guidance to all drivers. That was very successful, with a huge uptake on it, and we also released that right across our social media channels, and Police Scotland shared that as well for us. So moving forward, I think we'll be looking to host some more of those, because I think it's key that we get to all the different age groups. It's not just focused upon young drivers, but given the demographics within the area that we serve, we need to look at all age groups. So we'll continue to look at where the trends are, where the activity is, and what the age groups are that are involved, and then we'll deliver programmes to suit that. Moving on now to deliberate fire setting. It's positive to note a reduction in the year-on-year comparator, and though we have had an increase in the 3-year average. This includes historical low figures during 2021 and 2022. The key contributor again is refuse fires, and during that period and the lead up to bonfire night, we saw a bit of activity there. Bin fires again in particular has been highlighted within this category, and we identified 2 key areas of activity which were identified within Barrhead and Newton Mearns, and we put a focused approach on there between our community action team, our operational crews, and again tying in with our colleagues in Police Scotland, which included school talks, group talks and leaflet drops, and that's reduced this activity significantly, which we'll see in the next quarter. Non-domestic fire safety, again very low numbers within this category, a reduction of 25% in the year-on-year indicator and 13% in the 3-year average. It's also positive to note that there was no firefighting action required in any of the incidents concerned, with only heat and smoke damage sustained. So whilst this still has an impact on the individual, this is what's reducing our casualty figures, which is key. The 3 incidents during this reporting period were attributed to cooking within a school, a firework within a supermarket, and electrical fitting within a drying room, which was extinguished by isolation. As normal for any non-domestic fires, we will do an automatic referral system which involves a post-fire audit. So our enforcement team will go out and engage with the individual and provide support and guidance, or in fact enforcement where required. In the final category, unwanted fire alarm signals, again it's encouraging to note a reduction of 50% in the year-on-year comparison, and a 42% on a 3-year average. The main contributor within this reporting period was private sheltered housing complexes, and following review to identify any trends, there's no single area where it's key. It's happening in sheltered, self-contained houses. So I've been working with Steve and his team for anything that was involved within East Wren, and also with private housing associations to drive this down. We'll continue to support all residents and duty holders, and we'll continue to identify any areas where there are trends and interrogate the data that we bring in. We'll also utilise our UFAS champions, which are located in each watch within our stations, for early intervention, and again deploy our enforcement officers where required to drive down any key activity where it's identified. Chair, this concludes my report. I look forward to bringing in the new report the next time, which will be in a totally different format. But in the meantime, more than happy to take any questions that anybody may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan. And again, similar with police, another very strong report. So thank you very much for that. I'll open that up. Councillor Pragman.
Thanks, Alan, for the report. I've just got one question. It's about the 2 properties that did not have working smoke detection. What follow-up was done with them, and how did the fire service approach those who either owned or rented, lived in those properties?
Thanks, Councillor. So, as we spoke about with our post-domestic incident response, that involves properties either side or up or below the property that we attend, but also the property that we attend, we're checking to see if they have working smoke alarms, because that's key to reducing harm, you know, in the event of a fire, and also for an early call out for us. We will never leave a property without fire protection. We will carry out an assessment within the premises, and the assessment will determine whether the individual qualifies for the tolerable standards, which is the linked smoke detection, which goes into the properties. And if that's the case, then we will do that. If it's a private householder and they don't reach that category, or they don't fit into that category, we will still put in standalone smoke detections. We'll provide fire safety advice, and we'll make recommendations that they have that to fit in with the tolerable standards within the premises. But we'll never leave any premises without any form of detection. Also, when we're in these premises, if we identify any other issues when we're in there, that will be the information will be collected within the risk assessment that we do, and then we, with the person's authority, or if we feel the need for immediate intervention, along with colleagues with Police Scotland, we will then immediately act upon that. So it's a full risk assessment in terms of both fire safety and the safety of the individual, and how they can protect themselves within the premises.
Very reassuring response. Thank you for that, Alan. Councillor Bamford.
Thank you. I was glad you brought up UFAS. You steal my thunder, I can't mention it anymore, because I did look back in, I know you do comparators, I looked back in 2023, the same month, and there was 18 in my ward, and this time there's none. So clearly your new protocol is working, which is fantastic. I've got 2 questions. I noticed when I was looking back, flooding this time you've got is 2.89% of what your call outs and the work that you do, and in 2023, the same month, it was 12.87. Now, given we all see climate change, we're seeing, we all get emails from residents about flooding, whether it be in main roads near or round about their houses, and you know, it does seem to actually be increasing. I'm quite surprised that that has gone down. But I'm just wondering, given apparently it's now a red weather warning for tomorrow, which I know is mainly for wind, are you getting extra training, given we know that climate change is happening and you're going to be called out? And people think of fire brigade, don't they? Or, sorry, fire rescue service as attending fires, but as you always tell us about all the other things you do, are you getting extra training because of the increase in flooding? Because it certainly does seem to be. I am surprised, but maybe it's just that year was a bit dry for a change. So that's my one question. My other question is just, are you going to continue the work at Clarkston on the fire skills course with partnership with the police, which is anyone who's been along to it, it's a very valuable, and obviously the collaboration with all the council and various departments, but it's a very worthwhile Graham Galley gave me the kind of figures of how much it would cost for any of these young people if it wasn't if they weren't participating in diversionary tactics, what the outcomes could be. So I just want clarification that you're carrying on. You've got funding for that, or you've managed to get some money from somewhere. I know you're good at finding that.
Thanks, Councillor. So, first question with regards to the flooding, I've probably got about 3 meetings this afternoon in regard to the red weather warning that's come through. Already had a meeting set up, given the yellow weather warning that was come through, particularly within this area, and that's now been elevated. So I'll be involved in the meetings this afternoon for the whole of the west of Scotland. As a service, we are noting increased flooding incidents. And one of the most significant things about it is that they're larger incidents. So in terms of that, there's a whole host of pieces that put this together. So it's not just about getting the equipment, you know, so we can have all the equipment, but we need to train people, and we need to free up resources, and we need to free up capacity to allow people to do it. Within this area, we're totally covered with that. We have flood response within our stations. So they'll go out and assist in terms of recovery within the area. All our frontline appliances are also trained for the initial stages of flooding, and then we also have our water rescue stations, which are specified stations which will come in for larger scale events, so if people are within rivers, etc. But it certainly is on the increase. It goes by the nature, it's very much weather related. If we get a lot of rain, we'll get flooding. If we get a dry area, we don't. But there's also significant factors that can impact this. So the likes of the drainage systems, you know, have the gullies been cleaned out? You know, has the maintenance programme been completed there? All it takes within a local area is that if that has not been done as preparatory work, then we start to see flooding. You then get a build up, and if the water has nowhere to go, it recirculates, and that's when we start to see it. So there's significant things that can impact that. But as a service, we stand ready. We have our resources ready. That's a daily check, and we move resources about. So at any time at all, there's a call for that. We're already covered with that. For your second point, fire skills, something very dear to my heart. I did my initial training up here in Clarston, probably showing my age now, probably 18 years ago or something like that. And it all started in Clarston with a couple of watch commanders there, and they travelled to Sweden and various different places to hone the skills to run it, because it's very much the engagement of the individuals, but picking the right individuals at the beginning. And as Graham spoke about in previous scrutinies that we've been at, and in the reviews that we've had from the sessions that we've had, the outcomes are significant if you get it right. It can't just be, and having the right team to run the fire skills course is key. You're not doing it as a job, you're doing it as something that you want to do. So what we have done from the first course until now is we selected certain people who volunteered. So they volunteered to carry out the previous courses, therefore there were people that wanted to do it. So we now have them as a cadre of trained personnel that we can draw upon. So we're absolutely looking to run more. We're actively looking for funding just now. We're looking for ways to streamline it, and we're looking as well for our service to support us. Some of the significant challenges we have is we don't want to put a frontline appliance off its operational availability to run a course. However, the challenge then is on a Friday, one of the key things is when we have young people who's worked really hard all week, you want it to be a spectacle on the Friday. You want everybody that comes up to see it. You want them to be proud of what they've done. So you don't want an old fire engine that doesn't run. You want a nice frontline fire appliance that can come up there. So there's certain things we can do to balance that out, and the service are happy. So we can put things, you know, in place. Maybe bringing another appliance from Barhead over to sit in that day to cover in between the two areas to allow us to use that for the small portion of time we need at the end of the day to make sure that they get a really good passing out parade. So absolutely, we're looking forward to running more. We are running some in Renfrewshire. I think it starts on Monday, but I'm purely for the East Renfrewshire team, so I'll be fighting to get them running in East Renfrewshire, and we certainly will be running more. and I'm sure that Jill will be involved in that as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add on those 2 points, flooding, and it was a really good point that Councillor Bamford raised, and I think we're all acutely aware of climate change. I take it that when there is a flooding incident, there will be a report working with council in terms of what was the status of the gullies, as you mentioned. That is a programme that they do. Culverts being blocked, we've come across that before. So presumably there is a debrief and they take that on board.
Absolutely. What we will do is we carry out what we call ops assurance. So following every incident there will be a debrief form, and in some cases it will be a more advanced debrief, a structured debrief where all personnel that was involved, so for a large scale incident, all the appliances that were involved will feed back any good points, any points for improvement. And in fact, if we, fortunately here, we haven't had anything like that. However, if we do, we would then invite our partner members to sit within that debrief to allow us to feedback and discuss how we improve that for the future. That's all part of our planning, so we would absolutely welcome that, and we would have that if we had an event like that.
Thanks very much. And then again on Councillor Bamford's point about fire awareness, I think all members who attended it really appreciated and saw the value of that. So I think we would encourage council and fire and police to progress with that. And a bit of a cheeky question: have you managed to hire anyone yet from those cohorts?
No one yet, but they'll probably have about another year or 2 years to go until they're aged. But certainly we have got one gentleman in particular, which was probably one of the best things I've witnessed in Fire Reach. And for those that were there, on the first course he came in and he had no interest in the first day. You know, he thought it was something that was, you remember, and it was something that, you know, he thought we're all just out to put him through another school day. And for the second course he came in and he stood up in front of the 10 new people that come in and he told them about the course. Now that takes some turnaround about to be able to do that. And one of the mothers said to me, I can't get them to come down the stairs and have their dinner, and you managed to get them marching up and down a drill yard. How do you manage that? So that's what makes it beneficial. And I'm sure, and from my previous experience with Fire Reach, we have several people within the fire service who were on courses that I run in a previous role that I was in. So I look forward to having more, absolutely.
Very good. Councillor Anderson.
Great, in fact I missed it, so I can't wait. So, honestly, because I just want to be informed and want to obviously help encourage others as well. So in fact I won't take up a place if it's oversubscribed, and but yeah, I'd love to come down and visit. So with regards to the report though, and Councillor Pragnell's already asked about this, about the 2 incidents, but what concerns me is why wasn't it there in the first place? What, is there people out there? How do we get people? I mean, I fail to understand. It's difficult why someone wouldn't have it in their home, because absolutely detection is key. It will literally save a life. And you don't need me to tell you that. But so how can we catch these people who don't have them, or for whatever reason they think, you know, is it financial or what their circumstances are, you know? But it's getting that there. That's proactive. Is there specific how education, getting out there, communicating, that, you know, there's 2 people who didn't, you know, is there a reason? Actually, was it one that there was no fire detection at all, or it had failed, or do you know about that? Can you give me more specific?
So there are various reasons why some people don't have smoke alarms within their premises. It may be a private landlord and somebody's renting from the individual, and unfortunately we come across duty holders who have premises that don't have the appropriate facilities within them. Hopefully they would be registered through the local authority. However, we do get people that don't. We identify them, hopefully through our home fire safety visits. So key to the post domestic instant response is that if we go to number 11, number 9 and number 13, number 15, maybe number 17, we're chapping the door to ask them. So that person that's in there, the tenant, who may be with an unscrupulous landlord will open the door and we'll ask them to come in and carry out a home fire safety visit. So quite a few times we'll identify through that. Various other means are that people, unfortunately, we still get people who have a smoke alarm that's maybe positioned in the wrong area. Elderly people, and it's quite a difficult one to solve sometimes. You maybe get an elderly person who likes their rolling sausage in the morning and her smoke alarm's right outside her kitchen door. And every time it goes off, you know, every time she's cooking, and they become embarrassed. You know, they don't want the fire service arriving at their door, so the walking stick, you know, hits the alarm and it lands on the ground. Thankfully, local authority, because the provision that's in place there, that's identified during the normal checks. And now when you see our figures that, you know, we're upwards towards, in the majority of quarters, we're up towards high 90s, 100% of people that we go to do have working smoke detection and also the alarms actuating. So that tells us A, that we're getting to the right people, and B, that most people now have a serviceable smoke alarm. Unfortunately, we're going to come across some people who don't, and in our pursuit of the partnership approach, so being able to get in our fire service experiential training, so training partners on how to identify risk within the home is key to it. I mean, we have people, you know, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, nurses, care workers, home carers, who go in, young carers who go into people's houses. They're the eyes that can go in there, and they can, if we provide that training, then when they go into the house, they get access, they're the community connectors, so they can go in there and they can look and identify, and then it's a simple phone call to us, and this is part of us upgrading our home fire safety visit process to be able to work within the confines of GDPR so that we can share information under one protocol, and then we're able to share that information so we can help them with other support mechanisms that's there for them, but also all these other people have spoke about that's going into the houses, they can identify maybe you don't have a smoke alarm that works, or have you tested your smoke alarm and they test it and it's not working. One phone call and we can be out there and get a smoke alarm up for them. I mean, we can, you know, if somebody phones me just now, I'll phone the local station in about 10-15 minutes and they'll do that for them. So that's how we circumnavigate that, and we try and identify the people that's still at risk.
Great, thanks. Twice I've moved house in the area, and actually we've had your guys out and they come out, it's great, and the advice and everything, the safety's absolutely, that's really reassuring, like that we're actually, you know, we're going to actually catch those people. Two other things, one's a quick one really about, well, it's great to hear there's no casualties in domestic. That's brilliant, just absolutely what we want. But the deliberate fire setting and refuse is mentioned, and it's a key factor. What else can we do as a council, officers, environment? You know, if it wasn't there, there'd be less of a fire or no fire at all. So, is there anything else at the council, or what can we do partnership-wise to help that not happen at all? The second thing, so I'll just quickly ask that, and then we can finish up hopefully. There was traffic. It was talked about what the firework display went very smoothly, and it was great, it was fantastic, but I think part of that success was at the aftermath, and I was personally caught in the traffic, and it was gridlock. And I didn't mention it before because I knew it was going to come up, because I then noticed that the unintentional injury and harm and Giffnock and Thornley Banks mentioned is 67%. I know that's low numbers and it looks big because it's a percentage, but I'm aware of as well, and Stephen, in the CCTV area in Giffnock, the traffic now, and I think that was part of the issue because Thornley Bank, the road's closed because of the bridge. The traffic management, what can we do to actually, especially when there's an event like that, but even just in the regular rush hour now, between, you know, the traffic lights where the gym is now and the next set of traffic lights, I think it is for the Royal Bank, the traffic's getting quite bad there, and that is the fact that we're getting minor injury at small accidents because drivers are, you know, trying to get through or doing whatever, making bad decisions, we're getting bumps. So in relation to that, traffic management, it might be a partnership thing, but what can we actually do, especially when there's a big event?
Thanks for that, Councillor. So the first one, refuse fires and what we can do. we have a really good relationship with environmental health within the local authority. So when we identify areas as a fire service, and Councillor Bamforth touched on it earlier on about we still have the title of being a fire service, but we're a fire and rescue service, and there's so many other things that we're involved in. So, you know, if you speak to people just now and you ask them what we do, they'll put fires out, we go to road traffic collisions, and maybe we rescue a cat out of a tree. But there's so many other things that we're involved in, and the partnership approach is key to how we achieve within the other categories the work. So with the likes of refuse there, it's if you can have that removed prior to the fire occurring, then that's fine. So our fire engines, if they're driving past and they see a build up of rubbish, then that's notified into local authority, and local authority will come and lift that and take it away. If it's a private premises, so I spoke about it in the report, if we have a non-domestic premise, so for example a business within the area and they have cardboard boxes stored outside it, or they have you know, refuse that's come out of the business that they've got and they leave that lying outside, then we'll send our enforcement officers round about and they'll have a visit with them, they'll give them an improvement notice, and that doesn't stop there. So they'll advise them on what the requirement is, what the expectation is, and then they'll revisit and follow that up to make sure that that's not happening again. So we had a couple of instances in another local authority area during bonfire period where it was highlighted, Police Scotland highlighted it, we sent our enforcement officers round about, they moved it, and by the next morning they had took it back over the other side of the wall and put it back where it was. Unfortunately our enforcement officer was back round, highlighted where it was, and away it went in the back of a van. So whether they had that planned for their bonfire night or whatever, they had lost their fuel for their fire, so to speak. So we work closely with our partners to try and remove the risk before it happens, and where we identify non-domestic premises, our enforcement officers are on that, and that's part of our audit process. In terms of the busyness of the roads, we see that, you know, people are getting 2 or 3 cars now, so the roads are becoming busier. We certainly encounter these challenges when we're going to blue light incidents. Part of the UFAS process that we spoke about was reducing this type of incident so that we're not blue lighting as often on the road. Unfortunately, there will be events that's on, and when these certain events are on, if we're going to a large scale incident, we can contact colleagues in Police Scotland and also local authority, roads department, and they'll provide what they call a green wave to us. So they'll change all the traffic lights to green to allow us to progress through to get resources to an incident. So we'll have that. If we also identify any areas where there's maybe a bridge closure through our civil contingencies process, we're identifying the bridge closure early doors. Also any roads that's maybe closed, like we've seen in the Barhead side recently there. So we'll identify that, and then we'll contact all our stations. So we'll then look at the topography of the area. Is there a better road that we can go there? And then that will go out as an operational instruction. So if they get turned out to any of the premises within that area, they'll have it on their operational brief every night when they come on to tell them that they will respond via this road until that road closure has been lifted or until alternative arrangements have been made. In terms of build-up of traffic, we really don't have a lot that we can do about that individually. However, as we spoke about there, working together with Police Scotland on the initiative that we just did, which was a kind of prototype to see how it worked, and it was very successful. But being able to speak to people in the likes of the Avenue Shopping Centre and being able to advise, you know, just about, I know Police Scotland were talking about, you know, unsuitable parking, and I know that's enforced by, you know, in a lot of cases local authority now, but being able to give people that information about how if they park in the wrong part of the road there, how they then block the progress of emergency vehicles. There's potential there for people to be moving in an awkward fashion on the roads, and it can create road traffic collisions. We'll work together with Police Scotland, and I'm sure we'll have further initiatives to try and get that message out to the public. We don't have hugely high figures, and they're very limited damage in the bumps. However, we have had some last year which were more significant, but they weren't attributed to the build-up of traffic. They were more down to people's bad judgment. So we will continue to work with Police Scotland to address that.
I'm glad Councillor Anderson raised the issue of gridlock on the 5th of November. I did witness it as I had an essential journey to go to the east end of Glasgow for a Champions League game that night. And the gridlock extended all the way to Clarkson Toll and up to Netherley as well, so it wasn't just Giffnock. To me, that's not your responsibility, it's not necessarily the police's responsibility, it's individuals' responsibility to walk to these events where there is no parking rather than being driving. So I think there's something about the communication around these events in advance and warning, do not drive, be a bit more explicit on that if we can. I'm not sure what we said the last time, but it was an issue. Stephen, would you like to come in on that?
Thanks, yeah. There was a full debrief done after the GHA fireworks with numerous police, with fire, with GHA, environment and also community safety as well. So they are well aware of the issues regarding the traffic last time. So for next year, if it goes ahead again, they're going to get ahead of the game for comms, for advice to people, to have trying to minimise that effect again.
Thanks, Stephen. And obviously, people will probably ignore that, depending on the weather and all sorts of stuff, and if there's other important events in the east end of Glasgow.
One of the key things was the parking. It was people actually on the curb who then blocked our roads, and there couldn't be two-way traffic. That was one of the key.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the question, Councillor Anderson. Yeah, I think that the points have been well made in terms of the importance of communication, asking people to walk, asking people to car share, use public transport, and also in the general sense of event organisers, they sometimes will put on, if there's ability to do sort of park and ride in designated open spaces where you can shuttle people to and from events, it does all help that traffic situation, you know. And you made the point about the Champions League game. We were speaking before the meeting. I was event commander at the football match last night. 56,000 people. You can imagine there's a significant policing plan around that. It does not eradicate congestion. It's largely impossible, I would say. There are things that can be done. I have no doubt that within East Renfrewshire Council there is significant expertise in traffic management, for it is a science, as is the design of junctions and the design of roads, and I hasten to add it's an expertise that I don't possess. But just in terms of that general issue around traffic volumes, gridlock, Police Scotland is happy to be involved in any discussions that the Council may want to have around junction design, how we can phase lights, etc., to try and ease flows. But there is a fair bit of understanding of the situation that needs to be done before you do anything like that. And looking forward to the fireworks event, hopefully in 2025, because we're certainly very much in favour of those organised events for a whole lot of reasons, as we discussed earlier. More than happy to have conversations around how we might be able to support with that nearer the time. So please do involve Jill and the team in that before we go into the big planning phase for the 2025 event, which hopefully will take place. Thanks.
Councillor Bamforth.
Can I, it's nothing to do with the traffic, can I come back to you about something you mentioned about enforcement, which I thought was really useful? I don't have an issue as much as probably Clarkson does in terms of businesses and takeaways, but there is a particular row of shops in my ward where we frequently get people complaining because of takeaway boxes, particularly cardboard boxes. Environmental Health are very reactive, and they'll go out and they'll speak to them and they'll remove them and they'll go back a few days later just to check. However, and then a couple of months later the same thing happens again. And obviously it seems to be the route around, vermin and things like that that's kind of, I believe, is discussed. Is there any way we have access to be able to email yourself or anyone? Because perhaps maybe the fear of fire might encourage some of these takeaways to remove boxes and packaging more than vermin. Just a thought. I don't want to put more work on your service, but sometimes people react better to different services.
No, listen, I'd be more than happy if you could email me the details of the place that's involved, and I'll certainly get one of the officers to go around and have a look. Initial stages would be engagement, and they would go around and have a look and see what's involved. and what we could, you know, what part we could play in that, and then we'd probably tie in with local authority as well, environmental health, to see what it is, because if it's depending on the amount that's there, but obviously if there's a potential for that to cause damage to the property, we want to get that removed prior to an incident happening, and this is what drives down this activity. So, you know, if you could email me the details, I'll look into it and we can have a further chat off table about it. No problem at all.
Great. So, as we've got no other questions or comments, that brings us an end to this meeting. So, thank you very much for attendance of our colleagues from Fire and Rescue and Police Scotland. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you, members.